still over there? Are they still over there?
Huh?
Are they still over there? Yeah, all right, yeah. Thank you. OK， 好，今日係8月5號嘅墨爾本嘅第40幾個，第40幾個，唔係，第30幾個集會 ，OK。今日墨爾本第30幾個遊行集會，反逼針同埋反對非會議式嘅集會。This is the 32nd or the 31st Melbourne Freedom Rally on an anti-mandate and anti-World Economic Fuck-up protest, OK？
Everybody, yeah, sorry about that. I'm just my left ear, so that's bad. But I think I might have really had a bit hard on you. Practice here. Yeah, you get fired up, man. Come on.
Yeah. The hell? OK， 我而家睇下第二隊，睇下交成點，同埋嗰度仲有冇人。OK，I'm going back to the location that Victoria Farmers Federation. They see if there's anybody over there still, and also the other group. OK。Oh. Yeah. Oh, here we are, yeah. Yeah. Oh, hello. Okay, 呢度係第二隊 OK, that's the other group. Yep, that's the second group. They're Collins Street. So the first group is over there at Bird Street.
Hi, Marty.
Hey.
Who's supplying fire?
You don't have
Apparently there's like...
Hey.
Are you platform 1, 2?
What's that? Sorry?
Are you platform 1?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm just another one that they're all gone already. Those people over there. Where are they?
The farm, I don't know where they went.
They're the farmers. Yeah, I don't know where they're gone. Or maybe up there, maybe. Yeah, because some of the familiar people over there, yeah, up there.
Well, we'll go and take a look at the starting to speak to police some happenings, so a couple of minutes will head off. We've got plenty of flyers on this week. You'll notice on the flyers the The public exposure time limit has been pushed out to the 20th of August. So I think that's a good thing. It obviously means that the government's getting some feedback on it. So feel free to grab some flyers. We're going to make that the push for the next couple of weeks. And obviously the usual issues, the children. And we were going to support the farmers as well. It looks like they've wound up. So a couple of minutes more head off, guys. We'll be a couple of...
Okay. Okay. I'm going back to the other group, so I'll cover the other group first, alright? Okay, I'm going to the first group.
So guys, as we just pointed out, we've got the big run next week for Protect the Kids, which is going to be a fair check. And we're having an early start. So this Saturday, we're going to be meeting at the Red Steps at South Bank at 9 o'clock. The day starts at 10 at Jeff Shed and goes through to 4 o'clock. It may not go that long, but that's the hours of the guns or the trains going to result. Again, we're not doing these buildings, we're going to have to do the citizens and the workers to the buildings, so we're going to make buildings Saturday at 9 o'clock at the Red Steps at South Bank.
Yeah. Hey.
Hi, how you going?
Hey, not bad. Where they gone?
Yeah, just going up there. Yeah.
Oh, they're going off the other group. Okay, yeah. Yep, see ya. OK，佢哋啱啱行咗，所以我哋就唯有而家跟緊佢第咩嗰度 ，OK。Okay, all the other group over there. Yep. Okay, 2 of them following us, they're watching us. That's 2 of them. 兩個交通部嗰啲人，交通部嗰啲人 ，OK。Follow, be careful. Did they try any dirty tricks on you last week? Did they try anything on you again last week?
What was that?
Did they try anything on you again last week?
Have they tried me to sign
What?
the other week or
Yeah,
last week?
Last week.
Yeah. And I just said on the speaker really loud who they really are. Freemason, pedophile protectors, don't see protecting people.
on the agenda. Look, 30 years ago.
Get on, we should get on the tracks anyway. We can't block them for that long. What the hell?
Jab injury.
Jab injuries.
Jab injury.
Go and get your jab.
Jab injured.
Go and get your jab. This old cock is not gonna last long. This old ass wipe's not gonna last for long.
Inhibitors of our endocrine system. It's no wonder that testosterone levels in our boys and men are going down. This is absolutely very deliberate, folks. It's no wonder then that there are changes as people ask questions about their identity. So folks, don't be misled. This transgender don't be mistaken. This is $1 trillion transgender. Protect your children. Do not let groomers come into libraries and start filling our children with ideas of sexuality that do not attach them at that age. It's actually very harmful for children at that age to be introduced to. Do not let parliamentarians tell you that it's okay for children to be groomed, and that's good, is it? And folks, we're going to see very soon. We're going to see far better than ever myself. We're going to see him kill systems, these corrupt systems in ways that he hasn't seen before. We're going to deal with families in ways we've never seen before. So this is the time, folks. This is the time.
Don't tell you you know this when the police take it from you, man.
So, just like we had 300 men.
What's wrong? What's wrong with that guy? What's wrong with that guy?
He wants us to tram because he beat the tram crew.
Oh, all right.
I said we don't take any orders from the police, neither from
We're going to move on, guys. So everybody, we'll start heading that way, guys. We're community, we're village, we're family. God bless you guys. Amen. Sorry for the inconvenience, ladies and gentlemen, but so many people are dying from a poison that was administered onto the population. Yeah, let's do a high fight for your freedom and your future.
Five indictments. He's a
Okay, I'm going the other group, okay, on South Bank, okay. OK， 一路去South Bank 度會合第二隊 ，OK。我而家送走呢一隊之後，我去 South Bank 會合第二隊 ，OK。我暫停。Yep.
But that's what the government did. That is what their legacy is. They have done the right to pressure this country just in 3 years. The last 3 years is worse than the people. The last repression was 2001 to 2003. Just remember that the last 30 seconds. Ask the manager, how do you solve it? Ask if the government is working for interest. I'm going to ask again. After the last 3 years, does anybody here still trust government?
No.
To the public, do you trust government after what they've done to you, your family, your children, your business? And if you don't, you need to start questioning why they took the course of action they did. We'll go left here, please, guys.
The what? 2 weeks ago, the cops just couldn't help it. They tried to nail one of us for.
Read the banners, guys, if you're wondering what we're doing.
Yeah,
You'll see people with flyers.
No.
We're just trying to raise awareness.
On the face.
We're not trying to spoil your day, we're not trying to hold up your trams, we're trying to raise awareness because the mainstream media won't tell you the truth. The mainstream media won't tell you that the government is trying to take away your freedoms. The mainstream media won't tell you that the average age of death in the so-called pandemic is 84.7. The government, the media, they won't tell you the case fatality rate for the so-called pandemic, the worst in 100 years. The government is lying to you. And we are trying to get you to become aware of that and to push back against a government that is not working in your interest. The sad reality is, your own government betrayed you. They sold themselves out to globalists, to big corporations, the WHO, the IMF, the UN, the WEF. Your own government sold you out. And until people start to become aware of that and start to act on that, they will keep taking away your freedoms and your children's freedoms. Because it's not about us. It's about the legacy that we leave. The government's distracted us. We all know the bread and circuses line. If you give them bread and circuses, they will never revolt, and that's exactly what they've done. Take a flyer, champ. It's about the kids. It's about the government taking away your freedom, your right to access the truth. It'll take you 2 minutes. I don't really understand why people don't want to take the time to at least look at a flyer and understand that your own government is trying to censor what you can access on the internet, information. This is censorship through a third party. That is what your government is doing.
The government's now trying to shut down freedom of information and freedom of speech on the internet through the Communications Legislation Amendment.
What's wrong?
This bill's currently before federal parliament.
What's wrong?
It's open for public comment for another 2 weeks.
What? Yeah. Someone, where?
I think it was a bottle.
Where?
They're actually trying to forward their own agenda and silence anyone who speaks against it, whether it's true or not.
Again, they're
They're
trying.
not talking about stopping false information. They're simply talking about shutting down information that goes against their narrative.
Did you saw that 2 weeks ago they tried to nap on us?
What's that, mate?
Did you see that 2 weeks ago they tried again over that first street?
They cannot be trusted.
I was there.
Oh, you were there? That's right.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, that's good.
I got it. They tried. They just couldn't help it. They tried it.
No, that's
The
right.
government
They would
doesn't
never
think
change their spots.
that you're smart enough to go through information yourself and determine what's right and what's not right. The government doesn't have the right to do this. People should have the ability to access free and open information. Information that's false will be easily determined. Use your freedom of speech. Make a comment on the public website. Take one of the flyers that are being handed out, or go to the government website, acma.gov.au. Have your say before 20th of August. Shut down this bill and show the government that we won't stand for this attack on freedom of speech and freedom of information.
You'll see people out here handing out flyers. Please take one. Please read the banners to understand why we are here. We've been doing this for over 3 years. We are now simply trying to raise awareness, trying to spread information so people can understand the magnitude of what your government has done and is continuing to do over the last 3 years.
I was there this morning too. I was the farmers too.
It's not only COVID we're protesting against, guys. It's not so much a protest now
I saw that.
as an information exercise and trying to raise awareness.
The Europeans were doing at a farmers' rally.
Yes, the government let us down over the last 3 years, but it goes back a lot longer than that.
Ages ago when Europeans...
Think about what they did. Think about the measures they took. Think about the freedoms they took away. And then start to consider what is the agenda. What is your government's agenda by trying to firstly lock you in your house? Put you under a curfew. Close your business. Close the schools. On what evidence did they close schools? They won't divulge what science it was based on. What gave them the right to close the schools? They didn't have that right. What gave them the right to shut you in your house? Again, they simply didn't have that right. And I could give you statistics and data for hours. I can talk about the average age of death, the case fatality rate, the excess deaths, the rise in heart attacks. This has been the most catastrophic policy rollout in Australia's history. And again, we're not here for hatred, we're not here for angst, we're not here to try and disrupt your day. I personally am here because I love this country. Power to stand up for us. Who did? Nobody did. because they divided us. As I said, we're not here for hatred, we're here for love. To the parents here, are you happy with what your government's done regarding indoctrinating your children? Because that's what's happening. The government is pushing this gender narrative through schools and it's government funded. Your own government is trying to indoctrinate your children and they don't have that. Can be offered estrogen treatment and trans-masculine young people can be offered testosterone.
Get your bags.
These hormones are only partially reversible in their effects.
Silly old cocker.
They say that puberty suppression for children under 10 is reversible. That is your government making up science. There is no evidence that if they put a child on puberty blockers for 2, 3, 4 years, that is reversible. You may have heard of an institute in the UK called Tavistock, who was sued by 1,000 parents for putting their children on puberty blockers that caused such problems as lack of bone density in pre-teens. This is what governments right across the Western world are doing. They are destroying your children. They are promoting a gender ideology that is simply not right. So we want you to become aware of it. We want you to push back. We want consequences for those responsible, and we want change. And the only way change is when enough people get the courage to push back against what your government is doing, because they are not working in your interest or your children's interest. Push back, question everything. Have a good day. We'll move on, please, guys. Until you wake up, they will keep taking away your rights, your freedoms, and they'll keep damaging your children. Does your government have the right? That's the question you need to ask yourself. Don't forget the government works for you. Do they have the right to install their ideology in the school system? Do they have the right to suppress doctors? Do they have the right to mandate products that are untested? Ask yourself those questions. If you start to question what they have done, you need to start pushing back. If you see people with flyers, please take one. Read the banners. We want to protect your free speech. We want to protect your right to access information. We want to protect your children's future. Again, we're not here for hatred. We're here because we love our country, we love our families. We don't have to be here.
Ask yourself why
You must
you
become
know
active.
about this bill. Because the government doesn't want you to know about this bill that they're pushing through.
The government's been lying to you for many, many years. Over 100 years, they have controlled the narrative. They have the information source. They took away your right to access free speech. Your grandparents and your parents that lied to us. Now they want to control what you see on the internet. Read that flyer, there's a link there. They're trying to put the control of information in the hands of ACMA, who are unelected bureaucrats. Australian Communications Media Authority. Unelected bureaucrats who have the right to find you if you post this information on the internet. Just think about that. Your government is trying to control what you can view on the internet information-wise. And there are 3 exclusions in this bill. Information provided by the Commonwealth or state. Information provided by professional news organisations. So again, do you trust professional news organisations? The media has been lying to the mainstream media from day one. Remember the programs of This Is Our Shot? They all played along, they all compromised themselves. They are excluded from this bill. So the state government, Commonwealth government, mainstream media, and if they deem it to be satire, that is excluded. So again, who's the arbiter of satire? The putting the hands of judging what is information in the hands of unelected bureaucrats. This is not a free society, it's not true democracy. Don't ever forget that they don't have a mandate for what they've done. The state government of Victoria, Peter Andrews, has got 37% of the popular vote. That's not a mandate. That didn't give him the right to put us into a state of disaster, a state of emergency. It didn't give him the right to lock you in your house. 37% of the popular vote. Our current democratic system, representing democracy, preferential voting, doesn't represent you. It doesn't represent the family. It doesn't represent the working class. It only represents the globalists and those who see themselves as the political class, the elite. Hey, the flying guys. You guys heard about the misinformation bill before federal parliament? You heard about it? It's the fly that explains what's doing. What it is the government trying to control information on the internet. And if you don't think that's important, what question, why you don't think that? Do you believe access to information is important? If you do, then take a flyer, go to the website, leave a public comment. It's open for it's called a public exposure draft till 20th of August. We've got 2.5 weeks. Become active or not. It's up to you, yeah? If you sit back and do nothing, that's always a choice. And how will you be judged at the end of the day if you do nothing when the government tries to take away your freedoms? We'll come through, please, guys. Serious question, guys. If you don't care enough, ask yourself why. Is your access to free speech important? Did the government act within their powers the last 3 years? Do you trust your government? Become active. Maybe you don't have children, maybe you don't care about the future of this country. If you don't, that's sad. That's more a reflection on the current culture. Government's trying to control us, guys. Don't forget what they did over the last 3 years. Ask yourself if you trust your government. Do you trust your government to decide what's information, misinformation, disinformation?
Okay.
If you don't, go to the website. Become aware of what they've got planned. You know digital ID is coming. You already had the vaccine passport. This is the bigger picture. This is not just COVID. COVID was a trial run for these parasites. You don't believe us? Do you trust, no, serious, do you trust government? Do you trust government? On what basis? Well, we haven't held up yet, mate. So you say you... Denial. It's very sad. We'll head across, guys. It's very interesting. Everybody who disagrees never has a reason why. They shake their head, they look down their noses, but they never have a rational response to whether the government acted within their powers. Everybody knows they didn't. And those who then deem us to be the bad guy are showing their own insecurities, their own denial. Because you simply cannot deny what the government did is wrong. There's no justifying it. There is absolutely no justification for anything they did. And if you sit back and deem us as a bad guy, well again, that's a reflection on you. That is simply denial. And that is what we got to this point. Too many people didn't have the courage to do anything about what they knew was wrong.
The government's own data now shows that their actions were wrong. The government has never made any apologies, has never admitted any mistakes, and has pretended everything goes back to normal. Well, to us, nothing goes back to normal. These people need to be held to account. The governments and bureaucrats who made these decisions made so without looking at the right information, or simply did it for the wrong reasons. Either way, they need to be held to account. We need transparency and accountability of government back into society. Government needs to realise that the people have control. The government works for the people. This is the way a free society is supposed to be founded and supposed to function. The only way the government gets away with doing unjust things and suppressing people is by people allowing it, people complying with things that they know in their heart are wrong. It's time now to take a stand. The government's been moving, similar to other countries around the world, on a globalist agenda to try and get complete control over the population. It's time now to stand up and say that we do not accept this. We will not comply with things that we know to be wrong. We will not comply with unjust and unfair directives that don't serve the people. Remember what they've done. Remember the things that they did in the last 3 years. Think of the tens of thousands of small businesses that were shut down for no good reason. Look at the increase in depressions, the increase in suicide. The media refuses to talk about. These are all direct consequences from the government's actions. They need to be held to account. We had government officials on TV making daily press conferences, spreading lies and misinformation with no consequence. This is unacceptable. They're now trying to stifle your access to free information and free speech on the internet with the Communications Legislation Amendment. Have a look at the flyers being handed out. We'll go to the government website, acma.gov.au. The draft legislation's open for public comment for another 2 weeks, till the 20th of August. Have a look, read the legislation. If you don't agree, let the government know.
Read the banners, guys, if you're wondering why we're here. Take some flyers. We're just trying to raise awareness. We're trying to hold the government to account. There's going to be change.
Let's go.
And we've been working in our interest for many, many years. We want you to appreciate why that is. Why did the government take the courts of action like this? Who are they answerable to? So please don't go questions. The seat people with flyers, please take one out of the room. Another beautiful day in Melbourne. It's a good day to be
Let's play dominoes with him and flip one from that end and one from the other.
The solution is really part of the problem. It's a good day to stop complying.
Freaking put
It's
him
a good day to
there.
stop tolerating.
Come here, Gregor.
Stop being empathetic.
Come on.
Good day to be free. Afternoon all. And I apologise if we come across as a little bit loud. We've got the speaker system here. I apologise if we interrupt the interview all day. That's not our intention. We're not here out of hate. We're here out of love. A love for this country, a love for our children, a love for our families. We've been doing this for over 3 years. We've been demonstrating every single Saturday for years. And then I want you to extrapolate that out over 30, 40, 50, 60 years. How democracy has failed us. You can go back 100 years. When the flower of the nation's youth was sacrificed for nothing in the 2 world wars. Have a think about what your government's done over the last 3 years, guys. And then you need to ask yourself, what are you prepared to accept from this so-called democratic system, which is not working in any of our interests? It was just over 2 years ago that Daniel Andrews put us into a state of disaster. We were already in a state of emergency. On the 2nd of August 2020, 2021. He put us into a state of disaster. We're simply asking, what did he base that on? What gave him the right to put Victoria into a state of disaster? And these are things we can't just close our eyes and pretend never happened, because there are real life consequences. The damage that's been done to this community, to this society, is generational. And what gave him the right to put this state into a state of disaster, which meant 23 hours locked in your house? He gave you 1 hour out of your home. A curfew, 8 p.m. curfew. The schools were shut. He took away your children's right to education. On what basis? What gave him the right? He didn't have that right. And again, this is the big deal, because we're talking about the people's loss of freedoms, and then you look at the policies that we introduced based on flawed science, assumptions, and fear. Our governments all over the world were taking instructions from the WHO, the WEF, the IMF, the UN, unelected bureaucrats who didn't have the right to destroy families, businesses, your life. They didn't have the right to divide communities, and that's exactly what they've done. Think of the damage they've done and whether they had the right to do it. We've got the state thinking they have the right to control us. It's not a free society. And they don't have a mandate. I say it every week, Andrew's 37% of the popular vote. That's not a mandate. Albanese, 32% of the popular vote. Not a mandate. Every single state in this country, there's one that got above 50%. That was McGowan in WA. They're all sitting at 32, 33, 39%. None of them have a mandate. But this so-called democracy, this representative democracy, preferential voting, who does that represent? It represents the globalists, the elites, the so-called political class. Doesn't represent you or your family, doesn't represent your children. They're taking away your children's freedoms. They're taking away your children's rights. For what? So I ask, at what point do we say we'd stop accepting it? Because the only way this ends is when the people say enough. The only way this ends is when the people stop being divided, because all they've done is divide us. They spent 3 years dividing us. The only way it ends, because there's no political solution. You can't vote these parasites out. There is no political solution. It only ends when the people get together and stop complying, peaceful non-compliance, civil disobedience. Stop tolerating what you know to be wrong. Everybody knows that what they did was unacceptable, but we tolerated it for the greater good. I understand the rationale behind that. Everybody has become apathetic to what we know to be wrong. And apathy and tolerance are the traits of a dying society. Look at what's happened to the Western world. We're handing our children's future to globalists who were never elected by us, the people. Our so-called government think they're working in our interest. I despise them all. And until you start to realise the magnitudes of what's happened, they're going to keep taking away our freedoms. Think about what they did with the lockdowns, and then they mandated an untested product. How do we get to that point? We got to that point because the TGA is industry funded. The TGA is compromised. We don't have a separation here between corporations, the state and the institutions and the people. There must be a separation. Of course there's got to be some control of government because they fund the schools, but when you have government indoctrinating children through the schools, that needs to be a separation. There's no separation between the government and the legislature. And there are endless examples of this. Only last month, the Lawyer X case in Victoria, where the DPP, a woman by the name of Kerry Judd, who is the highest legal position in this state, decided that the Victoria Police had no case to answer for in the Lawyer X case, where the police admitted to paying off a barrister, Nicola Gobbo, to inform on her own clients. But the DPP said there's no case to answer. So that has to be political interference. Because Victoria, the taxpayer, your money, spent $100 million on a royal commission to Lawyer X, and the Victoria Police spent over $60 million on legal fees and wages. That's your taxes. That's your money. That was spent by a government that's not working in your interest. And the DPP, you can start doing your own research, talk to your friends, talk to your family. If you really want to get active, we leave it from Treasury steps every Saturday at about 1 o'clock. And I've spent the last 3 years absolutely astounded at what's happened to this country and how the government got away with it. I'm absolutely astounded that they've done it. I've been angry for many, many years. I've been angry for 20 years, and I actually believe that we are watching the fall of Western civilization, and that might sound like rhetoric to some of you, but to me there is absolutely no other explanation, but there is an agenda to undermine Western civilization. And I say, well, how did we get to the point where this has become possible? And everyone knows the statement, if you don't learn from history, you are destined to repeat it. So I just started having a look back over history and the fall of other civilizations, and I looked at the Roman Empire, which lasted for 1,000 years. And the parallels are very similar, because everyone knows the bread and circuses, which has become a meme now, which was said by Juvenal just after the birth of Christ, which is, if you give them bread and circuses, they will never revolt. If you carry across that to what's happened today, the bread is the welfare, and the circuses is the sport, the entertainment, the Taylor Swift, the Lizzo, the football games, the soccer. People, particularly young men, are obsessed by the entertainment. Pornography, sports, that's all that matters to so many people. Gambling, and the bread is the welfare. And the only time that people would rise up is when there was no bread and circuses. The Roman Empire, they made it last for 1,000 years because 123 BC, they introduced the bread dole, the grain dole, whereby they fed their citizens, because they knew if they had a full belly, then they put on the entertainment, they put on the violent sports, the Colosseum, whatever it was. If they were entertained and they were fed, they wouldn't revolt. And it took them 600 years before they did. Well, they didn't revolt. They became so lazy and so apathetic they were taken over. And Cicero made a comment on it. He said, the evil was not in the bread and circuses per se. It was the willingness of the people to sell their rights as free men for full bellies and the excitement of the games, which would distract them from the other human hungers that bread and circuses could never satisfy. So it's exactly the same today. The evil is not in the fact we've got welfare and we've got sports. Sports and entertainment are very important. We have to have relaxation, but when it becomes an obsession, and the welfare, again, welfare is very important for those who need it, but the government shut us down for nothing, then gave us the indignity of welfare. They said, we'll provide you, but you can't leave your house. Then they kept the football going. You know, the local gyms were shut, but the football kept going. The local health food store was shut, but Dan Murphy's was open. They want us distracted and apathetic and tolerant, which is exactly what happened. That's how they got away with it. And again, it took the Roman Empire 600 years before they eventually collapsed due to apathy and tolerance, and the bread and circuses that lasted that long. Today, it's going to be a lot shorter than that, the way things are trending. And then I look at, well, how did the other revolutions happen? The American Revolution. That was triggered by a tea tax of 3% and a dissatisfaction with being ruled from abroad, the English being in control of the colony. So a very small percentage of the population, they had enough, but they didn't have bread, they didn't have circuses. There was no welfare at the American Revolution. There was no entertainment. They had no other option. For them to have a sustainable, healthy society, they had to restructure, which is exactly what they did. No bread, no circuses. The revolution happened and the change was brought for the better. Then the French Revolution saw that and did the same thing. The French Revolution was, again, basically food shortages and a dissatisfaction with the ruling class. Is anybody else here dissatisfied with our ruling class? They feel like we're being ruled from abroad, the WHO, the IMF, the UN, unelected globalists, they're ruling us. It's exactly the same. But the French Revolution, there was no bread, there was no circuses. They had no other option. If they wanted to feed themselves, they had to rise up. They stormed the Bastille and they brought change. We are so lazy, we are so individualised, we are so controlled by government, we don't have that option yet. The only similar situation here was the Eureka Stockade. On the 30th of November 1854, Peter Lawler stood in front of 5,000 miners. And they said, we swear by the Southern Cross to stand truly by each other, to fight and defend our rights and liberties. 5,000 men got together. There was no bread, there was no circus in Eureka in 1854. 2 days later, 400 police attacked 150 men in the stockade. 20 men lost their lives. Again, they did not have any other option. The licence requirements were so strict that the miners couldn't feed themselves or their families. There was no welfare, there was no entertainment. These men had no other option but to stand up and fight for their freedoms. That's exactly what they did, and they brought change. That's what brings change. Doc Evatt, who was a former Labor leader and High Court judge, said at the time, Eureka was the birth of Australian democracy. We had a golden period of democracy after that. There were real changes to the legislature, to the system. We got male suffrage. We had a golden period of democracy, which was brought about from change because men were prepared to die for their freedom. They brought real, lasting change. While we sit here, we watch Netflix, we watch the football, and we just don't care. Is that where we're at? Because this is very short-term thinking. We've got two options. We can either take the example of our forefathers who were prepared to die for our freedom and our children's freedom, or the 102,720 young men who died and lie buried in foreign fields, who drowned in their own fucking blood in foreign fields for our freedom. We can make a decision to stand up for ourselves and our children, or we can keep complaining about it and say it's all too hard. You know, it doesn't matter, we've moved on, nothing's important. You can take the black-pilled approach and say, well, there's nothing we can do about it. This is a really bad time, I'm sad. Or you can say, this is the greatest time to be alive because we've got the chance to stand up and be remembered by history as the people who are prepared to stand up for our children. That's your decision.
Go, Matt.
I'm going to put you over to Liz. It's about time we had a female voice as well as Judy. So here's Liz. Thank you.
Hi everyone. This is completely different to what everyone else has been talking about because, sorry, I'll have to talk right up to the microphone. Yeah, it's like licking a lollipop or something. Alright, I basically want to say the biggest thanks to Matt for coming out every week, but everything he does, this man is a freaking wealth of knowledge. And you people who just aren't listening to what we're trying to talk about, you are missing out big time. Because we are here, not because we want to be here, we're here because we want to be here. It's out of love. This is why we sacrifice every single Saturday to come and talk to you guys, not because we've got nothing else to do, not because we haven't got families that we want to spend time with, but no, because we want to educate all of you guys, to let you know what's going on, because unfortunately you have no idea of what's going to happen. We know. It's our job to teach you to find out what's going on. I also want to thank those amazing guys over there who pushed the trolley. Now, this trolley, it would weigh a freaking bloody, it's so heavy. I don't know how heavy it is, but I don't push it. These amazing men sitting over here every single week, they push this trolley all the way from Treasury Place to here, back to Treasury Place again, up bloody Collins Street. Now, you know how hard it is to walk up Collins Street. Can you imagine how hard it is pushing this bloody trolley up Collins Street? All right, so these guys get a round of applause. Yep. Also, Randall, wherever he is, he's got the biggest thanks, because if it wasn't for him handing out all these flyers, getting them all printed out, giving them to everyone, to hand out to people, Randall, you're a freaking legend. And I freaking love you. Love you, Matt. Love everyone. So that's what it's all about.
Love you,
we are here.
Love you, Liz.
Oh, love you, Lee. He stands on the microphone as well, and he talks out to everyone. So big round of applause to Lee. And to everyone else who keeps turning up, because we are here because we love you. Not because we don't give a shit about you, but we love all of you who live in Melbourne, who live in Australia, because if it wasn't for us, you guys would be screwed. Totally screwed. So, woo! We all need to give each of us a biggest round of applause, because you know. Freedom fighters, that's what we are. And if I can get a bit biblical here, sorry. We were chosen by God to come here and speak to you. It's like we are disciples of Jesus to come and talk to you because we were chosen. What separates us from you is we were chosen by God to come and rescue all of you. So, alright, that's enough. Okay.
Thank you, Liz, you're the best. It's become a bit of a love fest, but we don't want to gloss over the reality of what's happening. And I honestly believe that, as I've said, there's no political solution. And the truth is on our side. We know that. But that doesn't matter if we don't have the power. The power rests at the top of Burke Street with these parasites who think they can control us. It's no good having the truth unless we have power. Might is right. And the only way we get power is with a collective, a mass of people who are prepared to stand up for themselves. That's the reality of it. We can love as much as we want. And I have so much respect for the people who've been out here every week for over 3 years. So much respect, because that's a very small percentage of the population who will stand up. Greg said to me a couple of months ago, you can judge someone's character by what they're prepared to sacrifice. And until people are prepared to sacrifice something, anything, the government will continue to take away our freedoms and our children's freedoms. Simple as that. Might is right, we need the power.
I would just like to add, again, that there are a number of issues that we have concerns about. Grab the flyers that cover any number of these issues, read it, do some research. If it resonates, get involved. Get involved, because the only way that we're going to win is if you get involved. Sitting on the sidelines is no longer an option.
Thanks, Ray. I'm just going to put you over to Randall for a minute. Just before I do, I also want to thank Liz for the kind words, but there's nowhere else I want to be. To me, this is the most important thing in my life. It doesn't matter if I leave this world with material goods or shiny trinkets or whatever. It does not matter. It doesn't matter if I go to every football game. It doesn't matter if I drive a nice car or live in a nice house. What matters is the future I leave my son and my nieces and my nephews. That's all that matters. So I would not rather be anywhere else than right here. Because if I'm not here, I betray my ancestors. I betrayed my 2 grandfathers who nearly died for this country. The blood they shed shall not be in vain. I betray my future children, grandchildren, whatever it is. I will not betray this country, this society. All right, I'll put you over to Randall.
Everyone, okay, next week we have an interesting event happening at the Melbourne Convention Centre at 10 o'clock Saturday morning. We're going to be down there to welcome in the Drag Expo. Family-friendly event for children 8 years and under to be allowed entry free. And you know what, folks? I can tell you from personal experience, I was down there last year, this time, August, last year for the first one, and I was absolutely appalled. I was absolutely appalled at the way little children are exposed to what can only be described as a full-on drag stage show. Bare bums and all, to little children holding their dear little pride flags, open-eyed, not knowing what the hell is going on here, with mums and various virtue-signaling parents taking their children to these events. Okay, you might say, well, I'm a parent, I can take my child to whatever event I blooming want to. There's got to be a standard. Where are the family values and the moral, where's the moral line here? Because as far as I can see, guys, over the last 3 years, 4 or 5 years, that moral line is dropping and dropping and dropping. It's so far below me, I can't even see the damn thing. Okay, and we see this activity happening with this drag expo. And I must add, by the way, that I've nothing against drag performers as adult entertainment, and I've nothing against this event if it was over 16 or maybe even over 18. appropriate, age appropriate. It is not an age appropriate event. We have little children there exposed to this stuff, and I ain't no conservative kind of person, whatever. I'm pretty fluid. But the thing about it is, this is just wrong. Just wrong. I am a parent, and it is wrong. Okay, we need to get down there and voice our objection firmly and tell the government who is funding this that this is not on. We've had enough of this stuff out there. Lately we've seen a lot of stuff out there about various books that are available through libraries for little kids, minors under the consent age, under the age of 16, teaching them about all kinds of sexualised practices. And I ain't talking about biology and reproduction. Okay, and that might be okay these days. I don't know. 5 years ago, it would have been kind of raised an eyebrow about this stuff, but today, for some reason, it all seems to be okay. Anything freaking goes for little kids. And one book in particular can be read by little kids ages 8, 9, 10, which teaches little kids about anal sex, and I'll say it. Now, that is out. For little children, it is an absolute disgrace, but this is about education. It's about education, apparently, and that's why we can't get the damn thing banned, because it's about education. I'm sorry, biology and reproduction is education for little kids in an age-appropriate way. What do little kids need to understand about this topic? I can't bring myself to say it again. I'm so disgusted. And I'm also disgusted with the community out there for not standing up about this.
For grooming.
We need to stand up. All good parents, grandparents, the community, friends, everybody. We need to stand up against this attack and assault on little children. Let children be children, for God's sake. Get down there to the Drag Expo next Saturday at the Convention Centre, 2 blocks away from here, guys, directly down that road. Get down there at 10 a.m. and support children. Support them. We're not going to have this happen to our kids, guys. This cannot happen. I'll keep it simple today. Get down there 10 a.m. next Saturday and help us as concerned parents do the right thing. Do the right thing and support the children. Protect them. Protect their innocence. Thank you.
Thanks, Randall. As Randall pointed out, this is government funded. Test. As Randall pointed out, this is government funded. You might not remember the budget of 2021-22. When we were in the throes of this so-called pandemic, we were short of ambulances, their healthcare was in crisis, there was no aged care staff. We were in a supposed crisis. The state government spent for academia, the institutions, the government. It's exactly what they've done. Andrew's the socialist, Albanese's from the socialist left, Ros Ward was running safe schools. The Marxists have infiltrated the political class and all institutions. There's no other explanation for it. And Marxism never ends well. We've got to push back, guys, please. Does anybody else want to say anything? We can have a bit of an open mic if we want, if someone believes the government. I say it every week. Unfortunately, nobody's prepared to justify the government, which is because there is no justification for what they've done. I've been waiting for 3 years for someone to give me any justification for what they did. Anything. And 3 years later, the stats are out there, guys. We all know. Average age of death, we know 86.9 the first 2 years of the pandemic. Is that a pandemic? 84.7 currently is the average age of death from the so-called virus. Is that justify shutting us down? We all know it was wrong. And it's not only criminal, it's evil, guys. It's true evil, what they've done to us. And who's responsible? Greg Hunt, sitting in the greatest middle of Australia's history. Is he culpable? So we'll probably move off, please, guys. If you want to come on the banners, please. And again, hopefully, we're going to spend a little bit of time. Apparently, we spend 5 hours a day on devices in this country now. We can maybe spend an hour of that and do a search on who funds the TGA or average age of death of coronavirus, or case fatality rate coronavirus, or maybe you can do a search as to why the government doesn't want to address the excess deaths, or maybe you can do a search on why they don't want to investigate the increase in 17% in heart attacks. Or there's so much we can find out. We have the ability to access the truth now, first time in history. Our grandparents had no idea because the government controlled everything. We now have the ability to access the truth. And they're trying to take that away with this disinformation bill. They're trying to take away your right to access it. Think about that. Because they know the truth's going to bring them down. They know the truth is bringing them undone. Because it's all out there, that they can't control the data. The WA vaccine surveillance report showed a 2,500 increase in adverse reactions. It's everywhere. The data is everywhere. You've simply got to have the motivation to look it up. And when you do, you won't be happy with what you start to read, and you'll start to, hopefully, come and join us, or stop complying. When they bring in the digital ID, say no. Simple as that. Don't accept the digital ID. Sure, I'm going to put you on to Dakota and say something quickly.
Just a couple of things. A lot of that stuff over the LGBT stuff is actually true. Once you get into the system, you actually can't get out of it. And I've been through the court system, and the court system is screwed. So as far as anything that happens with this new communication legislation goes, as the legislation, if it's not implemented properly, it's not going to be networked properly, which means that when you get into the court systems don't work. And as far as I'm concerned, the whole procedure that you actually go through with the courts is a farce, and the government is so structured that you actually can't get out of it. And I'm currently going through real estate shit, and basically they don't help you. And that's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Kate. So as I said, do a bit of research. Maybe look up why the TGA is 96% industry funded. That's an interesting one. The TGA, who approve every medication in this country, is 96% industry funded. So the people who are getting their products investigated by a supposedly independent authority is funded by those very people, big pharmaceuticals. And that's the truth. So just search that up. Who funds TGA? And why did that happen? It happened in 1992, when the US Senate introduced an act called the Prescription Drugs Funding Act, where the US allowed pharmaceutical companies to pay to have their drugs tested. Australia followed suit, 96% now. Prior to that, it was taxpayer funded. We had an independent board that monitored every medication. In 1992, that changed. Industry funded. So now, that's why all these drugs get provisional approval or expedited approval, because it's funded by industry. Professor Skerritt, who runs the TGA, his salary was paid by pharmaceutical companies. And it's so absurd, but it's actually true. So search it up. Ask why the vaccine manufacturers have no liability for their products. 1986, they approached the US Senate and said, we're getting too many lawsuits, we need total indemnity. So the US Congress granted it to them. Australia followed suit. There is absolutely no liability for vaccine manufacturers for children in this country since 1986. Because we followed America, and that's the truth. You can look it up. So why are they totally indemnified? Because they held the US Congress over a barrel and we followed suit. And we have no compensation for children who get vaccine injuries. Fact. Ask yourself why there's a very uncanny increase in childhood illnesses, neurological disorders, and so on, since the vaccine schedule went from 4 in 1960s to 19 to this day for a 4-year-old last year government.
Hello.
And they caught the coppers out, and there was like a card with a license storm shelters, and between them and me, there was nobody. And here we go.
Please take some flyers, guys.
Okay. I'm ending here,
read the
right?
flyer, there's a link to the website. You can go to the website, you can read the bill.
Okay. I'm ending here today.
Think of the ramifications of what it means.
Yep, I have to go home and take care of my
If
share
you're not
house.
happy with what the bill
So
says,
thank you
you
very
can
much
leave
for
a
watching
public
today
comment.
on this live stream. And if everybody wake up the last 3 years due to the whatever reasons you did not take the vax, just please subscribe to my channel. And yep, to those of family and friends who are same reasons, please tell them to subscribe to my channel. OK， 致所有人今日我要嚟，我完個 live 啦，咁咧我哋咧今日咧就即係致所有呢3年嚟覺醒嘅人咧，請你 subscribe channel。無論咩原都好，無論你有冇打到嗰支嘢都好。咁另外你有家庭朋友或者呢啲家人朋友或者即係覺醒咗啦，請你都 subscribe 我哋 channel。OK， 拜拜。OK， 咁就完成啦。OK， 今日嘅今日上我成班人喺度加班，臨尾前成班坐成3、4個喺度加班。OK， 當係俾加班費佢哋咯。OK， there's 3 or 4 of them that are still on watching us over there. I guess they want their overtime. Okay, I guess they want their overtime budgets. Okay, so okay, yep. So I'll end this here today. Thank you very much. Okay, bye bye.